Hello and welcome everybody to the Casual Spikes podcast, episode 14. I am Dakota, aka Crowday23, here on YouTube. Joining me, as always, is Randy and his famous cat, Mr. Greg. How's it going, Randy?
Going good. He went look at the camera.
He just wanted to lick the camera.
Uh,
Greg tokens coming soon.
I cannot promise people things that we cannot deliver.
Well, like eventually, like 30 years down the road, when Greg is but a distant memory and it's Greg the Fourth that has taken over the lineage.
But that's a good idea.
Then like it basically, so then like we could have Greg the Fourth be a siege gang commander, and then every other generation of Greg is the tokens.
Oh, there we go.
Or I guess it had to be senior, whatever, like it doesn't matter, the first one or the last one get it.
That's fair.
But funny enough, the thing that we're going to be talking about kind of has a siege gang commander. It's something like that. There's like the Eldrazi siege gang commander or whatever, the
Oh,
one that makes the
yeah, I
spawns.
guess. Yeah, okay. I was like, what are you going here? I was like, well,
Yeah,
yes, obviously, we're talking about Modern since Modern Horizons 3 has been out for 2 weeks now, I want to
yeah,
say.
yeah, just about.
Yeah, 2 weeks as of recording this video. So, 2 weeks, Modern Horizons 3 has come out and has definitely shaken up the format. Gone are the days of black red scam. So now are the days of mono black scam.
Yeah, it
It's killing.
kind of what we expected from a Modern Horizons 3 set, where we knew it was going to make an impact. It was just going to depend on how much of an impact, and I think kind of just like every other previous season, I think we find like one or two cards where like this is going to be pretty good. There's probably a lot of duds in the set, and turns out like Modern Horizons 3 has brought the heat metaphorically and literally, and has just completely turned the modern metagame upside down on its head, and leaving a few of the archetypes that we know and love that were dominating the format kind of like scrambling to like pick up the pieces and keep up with some of the new things going on.
Indeed. I do think that we're still in the like Brewer's Paradise phase of Modern Horizons 3, where like you kind of see this after any kind of big shakeup, right? Like anytime that there's a bunch of cards interjected, so basically any Modern Horizons set gets interjected, you have the honeymoon phase, which I think we're in now. To where like anything is possible. You see people building crazy decks and going, look, I just 5-0'd with this, I just 5-0'd with this, I took down a preliminary, or I did well in the preliminary. I got top eight in a 34 or sorry 32 or 64 challenge, and like we're seeing kind of all this things shake out. People are playing the new decks or trying new things. So obviously we don't have anywhere near an established meta besides two decks that we'll talk about later are popping up all over the place. Um, and so I think that we are still in a great spot, to try a bunch of things. And I don't think this is going to turn into where we're going to see just one deck. You have your one deck, and then you have everything else that you want to lose with, type situation. But I do think that we're in the honeymoon phase where everything seems possible, which is always like the best phases of Modern Horizon sets.
Mm.
Um, but I am interested to see what kind of like sticks to the top and what is here to stay, essentially.
Oh yeah, and funny enough, I think the worst thing about Modern Horizons 3 is the fact that they tried to also like backdoor in the Assassin's Creed modern set that is going to be straight to modern, and basically just as nothing noteworthy. It's kind of like the talent show at the Krusty Krab, where everyone just wants to see SpongeBob mopping. They don't want to see Squidward dancing, and unfortunately, Assassin's Creed is Squidward dancing.
Yeah, I mean Assassin's Creed 100% looks like just a commander set. Like I think almost every creature in that set is a legendary creature.
Yep.
So like it's 100% designed for commander in mind, like without a doubt. And it's obviously there to sell
The sell
Assassin's
packs.
Creed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Assassin's Creed fans. Like it's Lord of the Rings, but Assassin's Creed. Like it's just or it's Doctor Who. I think is probably the better example of that. It's like the Doctor Who set that came
Yeah.
out where it was 100% like commander focused, and it was there because nerds also like these things.
Yeah. Kind of. It feels kind of like cheap to call it like a where a lot of these Universes Beyond sets going forward were being like compared to the Lord of the Rings set, where like Lord of the Rings was this like massively expansive set, and a lot of cool cards obviously made an impact on the format, what have you. And it's like we're gonna do two of these a year. Well then, if you're making two sets a year and they're 100 cards deep, and most of the mechanics, like even the free running mechanic, which again, this is a set that is made for modern, is having a mechanic that references a commander doing it rather than the creature type that it's like meant for doing it to. So like it just feels kind of
Yeah.
like cheap, like, oh well, don't worry, like if you're not playing assassins and stuff in commander, like you just use your commander and you can do this. And it's like, then what's the point of having this be a mechanic in the set literally made for assassins?
Exactly. Like it's literally made for assassins, and so like, oh, but if your commander is doing it, it's okay. And it's like, okay, like just say you're printing this for commander. Like no one's gonna be upset. No one's gonna be like, oh my god, another commander set. Who would have saw? Although I do think Wizards needs to stop pumping out commander products. I think even commander players at this point have to be fatigued. Like they've had what 24 sets in the last like two sets for them. Like
Something like
everything
that.
everything is for commander at this point. It's getting ridiculous, and like I understand uh something something infinite growth, something something infinite money, something
Mm.
something capitalism, but like it doesn't work that way. You can't have infinite growth and money and people continuously buying your product.
Yeah, I don't think I mean, because like the solution that I would want and I think would kind of help. Um, oh, what was I going with that? I think the solution that I would want is inherently going to mean less sets per year. But like we used to have just like four standard sets and a few supplemental products, and that was it. And the fact that now every set that comes out essentially like really means something, just like we're adding new cards to the modern format. We're not reprinting old cards that need reprinted every 2 years. We're every 2 years or now every year having 1 to 3 sets made for modern that are brand new cards that you would not have access to unless you buy them. And I think that's the part that's getting kind of like the product fatigue, is just like you will legitimately be left behind if you do not like interact with whatever is coming out for the format that you play.
Yeah, and it's getting exhausting for sure. Like I mean, I like the Modern Horizon sets. Like I know like I don't think I'm in the minority, but I'm in the vocal minority where I think Modern Horizon sets are what Modern needed. It helped keep it fresh and interesting. And of course, you have the people who go, "Well, I can't play my deck that I built 12 years ago. It's not fair." And it's like, "Well, I'm sorry that you had to update your cards. Like, it happens."
Mm.
And then obviously I think the large vocal minority is that Modern Horizons ruined Modern, and it ruined it and broke it, and now it's not fun anymore, despite it being probably one of the most interactive formats you can play in, and it doesn't feel nearly as like backbreaking on either side if someone like does something broken or like aggressively powerful on like the early turns. Like you are equally doing something aggressively broken or powerful on those early turns as well. Like it feels kind of like how Legacy used to feel, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think at least classically, if you look at like mid 2010s Legacy, like I'm not even gonna say like the early because it's been around for a while, but just that kind of like format where everything feels like it's kind of powerful, but it's very interactive, it's very back and forth. There's a lot of different like archetypes. There's obviously clearly a favorite among the players, but I think every archetype felt like it was very powerful, it was doing a lot of cool things, and was just had the right checks and balances to stop the turn one reanimate Gristlebrand, or like you could play a deck that literally just plays Delver on one and then you counterspell your opponent out of the game. But like there was definitely some play on both sides.
Yeah, it was interactive. It was interesting. I think that's where Modern has come as a whole, and I really like what Modern Horizons 3 has done. I think of all three Horizon sets as it stands right now, I think Horizons 3 is the best set so far. I think among power level and dividing the power equally, obviously, like I said, I think we're still in the honeymoon phase of Modern Horizons 3, and we haven't seen, the true power of Modern Horizons 3. We got the Pro Tour coming up, which will inevitably show some kind of brokenness, I'm sure. Whether or not someone actually breaks the deck, like breaks a deck, quote unquote, or just finds an optimal build that people haven't found yet. Whether it's um, the blue red is or blue red wizards deck that we've seen running around, the energy deck we've seen running around, Nadu, um, the storm deck, all like the kind of new things we see running around. Whether someone figures out, hey man, if you play 4 of this one, 3 of this one, 2 of this one of this one, and 4 of the rest, perfect consistency every time.
Mm-hmm.
Or if we see, hey man, did you guys know this card was printed in Modern Horizons 3? No one's been playing it yet. No,
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
know that was printed.
Oh yeah. I think overall Modern Horizons period has been like a net positive, and the third time around, definitely a few under your belt, like we have a lot, I think a lot better of idea of like, okay, what could potentially be a problem for the format. And even though I think there's probably a few problematic cards that exist in the set currently, I think overall, like, the format is going to be fine, because by now I think something would have been like overly oppressive, and then people kind of like gravitating towards and like playing this. And I just see like different people on Twitter and stuff just like posting different 5-0s with, you know, old classic archetypes of the format before MH3, with some of the cards from Modern Horizons 3 kind of like helping them stay relevant in the metagame, or just
Mhm.
entirely new archetypes, which is just a breath of fresh air for the format, considering that before we got Modern Horizons 3, for one, there was no reason to really care about it, and two, people were just kind of sick of the cards that were already good being good. Let's find a way to shake up the metagame.
Yeah, I do think that this has been a good breath of fresh air, and I will say, I think that Wizards understood how to do energy correctly this time.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, though, I mean, it is comparing, a little bit of apples to oranges, because when you compare a standard format to modern that has infinitely more answers and things it's doing, it's not, a great direct comparison where, like, yeah, man, energy was broken, and you just got to draw a bunch of cards, do a bunch of little, like, token making, and, like, take over the game through infinite value. And it's like, okay, well, I can take over the game through infinite value by doing 16 different things in modern. So, like, is a little bit different. Obviously, it's not, comparably, apples to apples type situation. But I do think that they figured out the right balance and power level they needed. Um, the energy cards to be good enough to be playable, as well as not where it's just like you're playing energy, or you're not, or you're playing a tier 2 deck.
Yeah, energy feels like it's good, but
Mm-hmm.
not, not the best thing to do, like when it was introduced to us and everything. And like, while there's a lot of cards that I think if they were printed back in that time, we would have definitely been in a no-fly zone. Like, you're just objectively wrong if you're playing anything other than energy. But they feel appropriate for the format, they feel powerful while not being oppressive. And again, I think this set has probably found, for the most part, just like all the other ones, found the sweet spot. Maybe there's one or two cards that are like broken, but in a 300 card set, if like one or two of them like warp the format and you just get them out of there, and aside from that, the format's great, then I'd say like that's a home run.
Yeah, for sure. I don't, and I'm not sure. Like, in my opinion, as it stands now, I don't think there's anything that needs to be banned in this format. There's no emergency bans that like are necessary. There's no, Oko wasn't printed. We didn't have Earl get printed in this set. Things like that, where it's just like, clearly this is the best thing in the format. It's like a bunch of things have come up, and like I've seen probably 30 different decks that I want to try.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've talked about quite a bit before we went. I'm gonna say live, even though we don't do the show live. But we've talked about a few of the decks that were popping up that just look cool. Like, forget
Yeah,
even just being like the best deck or which one's the best build, what have you. There's just a lot of cool decks, a lot of powerful things going on, and again, just aside from maybe one or two of them, like, where I could see this being a problem. Obviously, compared to like the results and stuff we have from like Magic Online, apparently aren't really a problem at this current stage. So, cool format.
for sure. Um, you want to go ahead and talk about some of the decks that are popping up, or some of the more prominent, like obvious decks that are popping up?
Yeah, so you and me can have a fist fight about this one, or at least if we don't, someone else probably will. So, alluded to kind of like in that conversation, like when we had early access for the modern events and everything, and Doomwake and whatnot, playing with Nadu, and just seemingly like this deck was poised to be in the very very early stages to be like the best deck, full stop. Like,
Yeah, it was going to be a Bird Summer, is what people
yeah,
were calling it.
yeah, like, so for those of you that might not understand what exactly like Nadu is, or like what the deck does, so like Nadu is a 3 mana 3/4 bird wizard that gives your creatures that whenever they become the target of a spell or ability, doesn't matter who controls it, uh, basically you get to look at the top card, put it to your hand, or if it's a land, you can put it on the battlefield tapped, and this
Untapped.
ability untapped,
Yeah, it's so you reveal the
even
top card of
better.
your library, and then if it's a land, you put it into the battlefield, just on the battlefield, and then otherwise it goes into your hand.
So,
And it has this really weird wording of it. This ability triggers only twice each turn,
mm-hmm,
which when I first read this, I was like, I don't see why this is a problem. I was like, you trigger it twice, you get some good card advantage. Maybe you find a way to trigger on your opponent's turn. Yeah, like theoretically, yeah, you're drawing 4 cards a turn.
mm-hmm,
On like Magical Christmas Land, like that. I see that's not a problem. Like, good card is good, dies to removal. This isn't going to break the format. So what the ability actually is triggers only twice each turn per creature you have.
mm-hmm.
That's where the broken part comes in. So now if you have 4 creatures on the battlefield and you have like a 0 mana to equipped artifact, you can target them all 8 times and then draw up to, you know, that many cards or that many lands on the field or some combination of that.
Mm-hmm. And
So this is where the problem becomes.
yeah, the problem becomes when you play another card that's in Modern Horizons 3, that Nantuku dummy
Uh, Spring,
thickikins,
yes, Springheart is
Springheart
2
Nantuku. So whenever you play a land, you can pay 1 and a green and make a copy of a creature if it's attached to
bestowed.
it, or whatever that mechanic is called,
Bestowed.
bestowed onto the creature. And if you don't make a token this way, you just make a 1/1,
Yep,
and
1/1
that's
green insect.
yep. And so that's kind of the important thing, because then Nadu then gives that token that ability of when it's targeted or whatever that it gets to do with a thing. So you essentially just like go through your whole deck, and then I'd seen that they were winning with like Thassa's Oracle and whatnot. I don't know if that's still the win, but I'd
Yep,
imagine it is.
yep. So Thassa's Oracle is a win, and so I'm sure many of you are. And then the artifact of choice is the uh,
Shuko,
Shuko.
yeah,
Yeah,
Shuko.
Shuko. It's a 1 mana artifact, so it gets hit with Urza Saga, another great reason to play Urza Saga, and then it has a 0 mana equip, and it gives a creature +1/+0, which doesn't matter. That's the most irrelevant text. This card could just say it is. This card could literally just say equip for 0, 1 mana, and have no other text.
Oh yeah.
Um, so that's how you're triggering it a bunch of times. We also have Outrider in core.
Yep.
It's a 3 mana 2/2, has flanking, doesn't matter. You don't need to know what that does. But it has a 0 ability of the next 1 damage that would be dealt to Outrider this turn is dealt to target creature you control instead, which allows you to still go through. So if they destroy your artifact, you still have another out with this. And then they are winning with Thassa's Oracle, so you mill over you go through your entire deck. You then presumably have 2 untapped blue lands. You tap, play Thassa's Oracle, win the game because you have no library, so your blue devotion is always going to be greater than or equal to your library. Now, I'm sure many people are thinking, okay, well, I'm a control player. I let them combo off, and then I just counter Thassa's Oracle and they lose. Which would make sense, right? That would seem to be the correct way of how you would win.
That'd be pretty good.
Except that we have Sylvan Safekeeper, which is a reprint going into Modern. It's a 1 mana 1/1 for 1 green, and it has sacrifice an artifact or sacrifice a land. Target creature you control can't be targeted spells or abilities this turn. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why this matters, though, is so say you counter Thassa's Oracle. Hooray, you're going to win next turn. They're going to sacrifice at least 2 lands, and then they're going to flash in or pitch cast the 1 endurance in the deck. So they're going to shuffle their graveyard back into their deck, and if they're smart, they'll stack the triggers to where endurance sacrifices before the endurance trigger happens. So they'll shuffle it back into their library or their graveyard into their library. There's at least 2 blue lands now that are going to come into play untapped because Nadu says just put a land into play instead of putting it into play tapped like it should.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be able to draw their Thassa's Oracle, their 2 lands, and endurance back, and keep doing this.
Oh yeah.
So this is essentially the problem. Is once the deck is in the combo off stage, it's going to almost it's a deterministic win. Basically, like you're not going to have enough counterspells to stop this.
Yep.
Like I guess you could have enough counterspells to stop this in the sense of you need to have at least 2 counterspells for this. But this deck is also running, Wall of Root, Still-Hided Halfling. The one list I'm looking at was playing a Gilded Goose, all to tempo this out faster. Mm-hmm. They're also running Teferi in the main deck, so that's great. You have counterspells. I'm going to play Teferi. Do you still have counterspells? Cool. I'm going to win now.
Yeah, you have like 3 layers of protection. Like really, honestly, from everything else, you probably don't even have to wait another turn for like that sequence to play out that you just described. You could probably like do the endurance thing, shuffle everything back, and then just like start targeting creatures again and like going through it, and then just setting up and doing it again.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. You could do that. You can do the endurance trick on the same turn.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you could still win the same turn. Like the deck is ridiculously resilient in and of itself. So obviously this has led people to wanting to or believing this deck is going to get banned. Right? It's a combo deck. It does well. X, Y, Z. It does seem very powerful. I will say that despite for the numbers that it is played, like being currently 12% of online meta, it is not taking down all the tournaments. It's not winning all the tournaments. It puts up, top 8 numbers. It puts up top 16 numbers for sure. But it's not, like, dominating to the point of, like, we're seeing 4 in the top 8. It's putting up, like, 1 or 2 maybe in the top 8. Maybe, like, 3 in the top 16.
I'm going to look up at that because I kind of have a theory about why that kind of is that, like, the problem that this deck kind of has, and probably why it's not taking down anymore.
So this is the other thing people are theorizing, obviously, because there's a lot of clicks to Magic Online, right? And it's a struggle on Magic Online. If you've ever played Magic Online, you're making a bunch of tokens, you're doing a bunch of dumb stuff. Even if you do this, even on Arena, kind of has this problem too. If you make a lot of tokens, it slows the game down a lot, right? It's like the client's not meant to deal with like the fact that you're making 42 tokens this turn.
Mm-hmm.
And individual triggering, by the way, to make each individual token. It's a pain. So, it is a theory that, like, it's because Magic Online is more of a struggle to play combo decks like this, where it's a lot of interaction. It's like the theory of why, like, Yogg doesn't get seen a huge amount of play either with, on Magic Online, because because it's a lot of clicks and things like that, and you can't easily time out, but you can easily time out, right? If you're just not like consistently fast and going through it. So that is a theory, and like obviously that's going to get put to the test here at the Pro Tour, where if we're just going to see the Pro Tour be 82% Nadu decks, all right, we might have a problem. Like that's obviously I don't think you're going to have 82% of the meta be Nadu, but that is what people are theorizing, is that you're going to come to the Pro Tour and this deck is going to wreck house.
Yeah, I mean it's got the consistency, it's got the ramp, and it has a combo finish, and I can only assume that technically I guess it could make infinite tokens with the Sylvan Safekeeper and the Endurance, because you can just keep putting the lands back in your deck, and then you just keep going through and making more 1/1s because you just keep hitting lands and then sacking them and doing stuff. So I mean, yeah. I guess
quote unquote infinite. I mean,
you can loop as many times as you want.
You can loop as many green cards as you have in your hand.
Oh yeah, I guess that's true. Either way, like I would imagine like getting like 20 some odd lands or how many like lands this deck plays, and then just being able to shuffle them, put them back into play, and then sack them, and stuff like that. Like
Oh
against
yeah,
most
for
decks,
sure.
you make enough 1/1s, so like you don't even need the Thassa's Oracle kill either.
Yeah, you can definitely get to a point where like this deck does have like essentially a good beatdown plan as a whole. Like it kind of has it does a good fake um Yawgmoth deck where like Yawgmoth always has the issue where like, hey man, you countered my like Yawgmoth. Well, I'm gonna start attacking like these shitty creatures that you don't want to waste removal spells on.
Mm. Yeah, and this deck doesn't really have it doesn't feel like it applies pressure just naturally by playing the things, and then like it feels like you can try to kind of be all out on like stopping the combo, like you don't let Nadu resolve or anything like that, and then like you don't really pressure with the creatures. But I mean, I don't know, this format's like nuts, so I mean I definitely have a lot of stock in like the Nadu deck finding a window to slam their creature and then just win the game on the spot.
Yeah, so I will say that like the control decks have done a decent job of beating the Nadu deck. I've seen it lose. I've seen Nadu lose quite a bit. Like it is not like I don't think it's this broken deck where like again I don't think we're in a format where you're playing this deck or you're playing the deck that's gonna like you're playing this deck or you're losing. Like we're not in like like Hogak situation, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we're not in that like ridiculousness level. Now, could it get to that point because we have the Pro Tour coming up and things of that nature, and obviously people are going to be looking at playing that deck? Maybe. I'm not a fortune teller. If I was, I would not be living where I am. But I do think it's interesting to see what happens with that deck, and maybe there is a ban, maybe it is too broken, maybe it's not. Only time is going to tell for sure.
There's one thing I am sure of though, Randy.
What's that?
The Storm deck is like kind of ridiculous.
It
This is
it
pretty
is so
ridiculous.
it's so ridiculous, and it still loses to removal, like it or like not removal, sorry, but it still loses to like um people playing it, right? Like it's not
Mm.
broken at all. Like it's broken, but it like if you have the sideboard hate for it, it's not like just like auto beating sideboard hate too.
Oh yeah, but like this is just I don't know. Like it's disgusting. I am absolutely disgusted by Ruby Storm.
Listen, anytime I can get a turn two kill from a board state of two lands into grape shotting my opponent for over 20, I'm here for it.
Yeah, I mean like for those that may or may not be in the know, but Ruby Storm, with roughly 8 cards from the Modern Horizons 3 set, have basically catapulted Storm back into it definitely in the conversation of being one of the better decks to play in the format for a few reasons, and one of them being the fact that this deck has multiple different ways to just win the game on turn 2 and basically leave your opponent out to dry. My God.
Yeah. So, for anyone who may have watched us talk about cards we were excited for Modern Horizons 3, I said that the medallions are probably going to do something, and I'm just overlooking it. This is what I was overlooking, by the way, is that Ruby medallion is just low key broken.
Yeah.
So it turns out having a 2 mana artifact that says your red spells cost one less to play makes all these stupid 2 mana rituals turn into dark ritual, but for red.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out that's really good. In case anyone was curious.
And on top of that too, just being the benefit of like not being a creature as well, as being like the mana reducer, because that was kind of
Mm-hmm.
the problem with I think older like other storm decks aside from also being forced to play blue to like play them, but the fact that all of their reducers were essentially creatures and they all died to the simple the most played form of removal in the format, and this deck has 4 copies of a cost reducer that is infinitely harder to interact with, pairing with another one that can, on the backside is super broken, but basically saying that like in the early game, you can either deal with the Ral or you can deal with the medallion. You're not gonna be able to deal with both.
Hmm. Also notably, so I guess we'll go over Rao real quick. He is one of the legendary flip planeswalkers that we got. He's a 2 mana, 1/3, one red, one generic, and then instant and sorcery spells you cast cost one less to cast. All right, we've seen this before. We just talked about the blue red storm. We had Brawl and the Goblin
Goblin Electro. Yep.
Electromancer.
Yep.
Yeah. Um, you know, okay, that's not broken, right? We've seen this ability. Nothing wrong there. He also has, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell during your turn, you flip a coin. If you lose the flip, he deals 1 damage to you. If you win the flip, you may exile Ral. Notably, this is a May ability, so you don't have to flip him as soon as you win a flip.
Mm.
And then if you do, you return to the battlefield transformed under his owner's control. He has a sweet little line of text of when he enters the battlefield, when he enters the battlefield with additional loyalty counter on him for each instant or sorcery spell you cast this turn. So if you cast, 6 instant sorcery spells before you got to flip him, he has 6 more loyalty on him. His +1 is just until your next turn, instant sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. -2, he deals 2 damage divided as you choose among any 1 or 2 targets. Then you draw a card if you control a blue permanent other than him. He flips into a blue-red planeswalker. And then -8, exile the top 8 cards of your library. You may cast instant and sorcery spells from among those this turn without paying their mana cost. And he has 2 loyalty when he starts off. So, obviously the goal is to cast at least 6 spells before you flip him, because it's a May ability. You can do that. You get him up to at least 8 or higher. You can instantly -8, exile the top 8 cards, be able to cast all those instant and sorceries for free, just continuously building up your storm count. Also, if you're exiling the rituals, you're just, getting more cards or getting more mana, so you can cast your actual spells. If you're exiling the cards to draw more cards, you're just getting even more cards on top of that because you're paying them for free. It is just overall a very good card.
Oh yeah, just absolutely insane. Like the fact that your cost reducer does more than just cost reduce. It ends up like being able to extend kind of your combo if you start to like fizzle out, and this deck, I mean, I've had a few games where like I've mulled to 5 and still was able to flip Ral into, at least 8 loyalty on him, and really from like nothing. So really just an invaluable piece to the deck. Like you absolutely cannot leave home without this card if you're going to play Storm.
Mm-hmm. It is a broken card, and it's a broken card in Storm, and it's also broken in the sense of, so for whatever reason, and I don't know why Magic did this, because this was years and years ago. All the spells that make mana are also instant speed spells. For whatever reason, Wizards thought that was a good idea or needed to be a thing. So your Desperate Ritual, your Manamorphose, and your Poetic Ritual are all instant speed cards. So it's very good, especially if you need to realize if you play Storm too, like you don't need to go for it on turn 2. Just because the deck has can win on turn 2 doesn't mean you need to force it every time. It's like when you draft in Cube. Yeah, Storm looks fun, but you don't need to force it every time. It's not always the right choice. But that being said, the reason why this matters is like if you're waiting a couple turns, so you play your Ral, and you have a couple mana still open after you cast your 2 mana spell, you can start off obviously with a Desperate Ritual or whatever ritual you want. Right, you're gonna pay 1 mana, put the trigger on the stack. Now, most players who are smart to understand you're playing Storm are going to hold up a removal spell. Right, Ral's a problematic permanent. Is still a creature. He dies to removal. I'm gonna hold up removal. So they go to bolt it, whatever. You can play another ritual then in response to that, and now you have another trigger on the stack to be able to flip him. Now, obviously, this isn't going to work every single time, but it is a way that I've saved Ral a couple of different times, being able just to be patient against my opponent that I know has 16 removal spells in their hand, waiting for me to play my Ral. And it is a little bit crazy how you can like set this up and kind of get a chain reaction going of just like playing like 6 spells, or like realistically like 2 or 3 spells before he's going to die, and then get that chance to flip him and be able to keep him safe. Because now he's much harder to kill because planeswalkers are not just super easy to kill, and he's coming in with even more loyalty, so a bolt's not just going to take him out.
Oh yeah, and even then, like the turns that you end up like flipping him to like save him or whatnot, but you're still able to like cast enough spells. You could just +1 and still get the cost reduction as well if you're not able to go into the ultimate ability that turn, which is also just more than good enough when you're working with enough resources.
Yeah, so there was a game, because I played at least 2 leagues of this now, where that exact situation happened, and I waited till turn 4, knowing my opponent was holding up removal. Um, they were still interacting, like they were still trying to put pressure on me, so they weren't like have 4 mana open to kill Rao because they wanted to kill me still. I play Rao, I go to play my ritual, they go to kill it in response. Luckily, they only had one kill spell. I played a ritual, didn't flip. Played another ritual, didn't flip. Played a third ritual because I got to be the super luck dog and draw into Metamorphose and the Metamorphose, and flipped Rao, and was able to then win that game because I flipped around and still got the ability to keep going. I think the deck's so fucking stupid that I was able to eventually exile another Rao, cast a creature Rao, and then play no spells to flip him later. Like it's just so dumb how consistent this deck can be.
Oh yeah, this is a deck where I think Ruby Medallion, like when you've kind of got to that turn where like you have enough mana and you have enough cards, you're just looking for, Wish or Past in Flames to kind of go till you get a Wish so you can go and get your Storm card to win. That, Ral isn't just a cost reducing thing, it's also something that you can play and then, in addition, keep casting more spells so you can flip him and then dig 8 cards deeper to find some way to end up eventually winning the game. And he's just not a pretty face. He also helps you win the game.
Oh yeah, definitely a deck that you're gonna see everywhere. As of right now, I know in the 2 leagues I played against the mirror match 3 different times, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Because even you know, when you look at like past experiences where like we had a quote unquote best deck or like a quote unquote really good deck to play, you could play a league and not ever like face the mirror match. And playing the mirror match 3 times in 2 leagues is almost unheard of.
That's a 30%, 30% of the time playing against Storm.
Yeah, it was kind of wild how many times I played against it. Um, the storm matchup's super weird too. Like the mirror match is super weird because it's one of these really weird of do I force it on turn 2 because if I don't, my opponent might force it on turn 2 and just win, or do I make the read that I'm gonna like slow down a little bit, develop my mana, develop the game plan a little bit better, and then go off on turn 3 or 4 when I know it's almost like a deterministic kill because it's never really deterministic with Storm unless like your opponent's like 3 life and you have spell great shot. like
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, this deck is stupid.
oh yeah, and it's stupid fun to play. Like it is probably one of the most fun I've had playing Magic in a while because it's just you get so many different like little micro decisions with this deck that I like.
Yeah, this probably, assuming that if we had the Pro Tour like tomorrow, and this went on, I think I'd pick Storm. I think there's a lot of really good players out there, so this is like respect to a lot of the like very good like technical players. I think Storm would be my number one deck, either that or like Nadu, full stop. Like I think those two are the most hyped decks, and that they would assuredly be at least in the top three most played decks if we had the Pro Tour right now.
Yeah, for sure. I think that going into the Pro Tour here in a couple weeks, we're gonna see Storm and Nadu probably be at least in the top 5 decks. Obviously, Storm is a lot weaker to a bunch more hate cards out there. It is weak to a bunch of things, and that's why you see the sideboard that has basically answers to hate cards. Like that's what the deck needs to worry about. That's what the deck's going to worry about.
Oh yeah. Yep, this deck's stupid.
It is, but it's fun.
Um, One last thing before we get into some other cards, because you and me kind of shouted out some cards in, I believe, our last episode or 2 episodes ago that we were kind of excited
Hmm.
for the format. But you know, a lot of those cards we ended up talking about too, and then we brought up were kind of these I'm gonna call them retrains on some of Magic's like historically great cards. You know, we had Chthonian Nightmare being the recurring nightmare kind of fix. We saw, you know, Necrodominance be the fix to Necropotence, and those cards, turns out, even when you try to fix them, are still kind of busted. And I saw a tweet from, I believe it was Nikachu, and he said that Necrodominance just said like, should have said like, you also can't gain life on top of all the other restrictions and stuff. And like that just goes to show you that, like, you know, even with, you know, a lower hand size and skipping your draw step and having to pay life up front to then draw cards into one of the most played, if not the most played creatures in the format, being Orcish Bowmaster, and that card is still, like, maybe not too good for the format, but is definitely still very powerful of a card, a
Hmm.
very powerful effect, you know, and nightmares while getting some 5-Os with some pretty crazy deck lists fitting into current archetypes that we had pre MH3 and some of its new ones. Uh, Turns out these cards were probably a home run, a lot of fun to play. Maybe not as busted as their original counterparts, but you know, just ended up being a lot better, I think, than some people gave them credit for.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Um, just kind of like you said, nothing. I don't think there's anything too broken, like in the re-sleeved cards, like the reworked broken cards. Um, Obviously, I think Necrodominus is probably still really good. Obviously, like, you know, there's still like the craziness that Necrodominus plus like Shieldred is still amazing because like you're gaining one life instead of losing a life, essentially, for every card you're drawing. So still kind of fixes that problem as well. Or like the fact of like, even if you know you say with Necrodominus you draw 10 cards and you only get to keep the best five, like that's still amazing card selection though.
Oh yeah, I don't know if people necessarily underestimated. Like I think people thought that maybe the hand size limit and then like drawing them instead of setting them off to the side, putting them in your hand later, was going to be enough of like a kind of a drawback to this card. And
Mhm.
uh, you know, I personally didn't believe it, because even if, you know, I draw 7 cards, or I draw, you know, 2 or 3 cards over like the hand limit that I have, you know, I still get to pick the best X cards from Y cards in my hand. So like that's still just probably really good. Like who cares if I'm down like resources and I only have 5 instead of 7 cards? Like I could probably still win the game dumping my hand and then drawing 5 cards every turn.
Yeah, and it's still the point of like just being able to, if I draw like going back to like if you draw 7 cards, right? So like it's a normal hand,
Mm-hmm.
and so like we're at least turn three when we're playing Necrodominus. I guess realistically you could be, yeah, you like in the decks that's playing it, it's turn three. Like they're playing it on turn three basically.
True.
Um, and if my deck is designed to be all low to the ground or like max out at 4 mana essentially, it's very easy to pitch the extra lands that I drew. Like, oh no, I drew 2 cards over and had to discard 2 lands, but I got to keep 2 spells.
Mm-hmm.
Oh darn.
I think too. Now that I'm thinking about it, there is some, I think some versions of like the mono black decks that I think are playing like Phyrexian Tower, that in theory you could turn 2 Necrodominants after, you know, doing like the full scam.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you go, yeah, turn one scam, turn two, or like I guess you can even do turn two scam because you can
Yeah,
scam and then with the evoke trigger on the sacrifice it. Yeah, okay, so
yeah,
yeah, I guess you can turn three Necrodom or turn two Necrodomus if you
yeah,
want to. That is correct.
yeah. I mean, either way, like that's also just a good way to like get cards out of your hand so that you can draw, essentially be safer drawing more cards. You know,
Yeah,
where you get to draw 6 instead of like 3 if you're really worried about having to discard cards to hand size.
yeah, which you should not be. Do not be worried about that. Taking the best, taking the best card is much better than anything else. Jesus. Sorry, I was looking at the deck, and so with the Necrodominants, like we've seen some cards, jump up in price. Like we saw the artifact in the uh the bird deck.
Yep.
The artifact's up like $30. I'll give you a nickel if you know what Soul Spike does.
What Soul Spike does?
Yeah.
Oh, is it from the new set or is it like an old card?
No, no, it's an old card. It's from Cold Snap.
Soul Spike? Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay, so you remember what Commandeer does?
Yeah.
Same kind of principle. So it's a
Oh, it's
seven
the
mana.
remove 2 black, deal 4, you gain 4.
Yes.
Okay,
So
yeah.
would you like to take a guess on how much that card's going for now?
I think I saw is like it's definitely in the double digits now. I think it's like $20.
Yeah, it's like $22 right now.
Oh, give it to me. Yeah, because it's stupid things where like you could just draw a bunch of cards and like, oh,
Yeah,
guess what? Spike you. Like now I gain 4 life and I could just draw 4 more
I can
cards
draw
next
more
turn.
cards. Yeah, I can draw more cards, guys. You don't understand.
Yeah, like I knew that card it had to be really good. How is Necro? How is any version of Necro bad? Currently, they're 2 for 2.
But it is nice to see like these cards making or these um fixed versions of these cards are still doing well. And I don't think it's broken, right? Like I don't think that this is necessarily broken or taking over the meta. Obviously, um, I think we've seen that by the fact that like it's not dominating every tournament, right? There's not six Necro dominant decks in the top eight of every top 32 and top 64 other 32 challenge and 64 challenges. So like again, maybe it's because we're still in the honeymoon phase and people haven't figured out that like, oh, I should just be doing this, or maybe it's because it's not the most broken thing. It just feels like every deck feels really good when it's doing its thing all the time, right? Like there's no deck that you can build in well. There's no deck that has a thought out game plan that feels bad when it's doing its game plan.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't matter what deck you're playing in the format. If it's doing its game plan, it feels like it's great, right? Like it's how every deck is. Like when everything goes perfectly, it always feels like it's the best deck in the format, no matter what you're doing.
Oh yeah. And shout out to the design team and everything like that for doing some of these, basically being bold enough to look at some of the most powerful cards in Magic's history, and at the very least, cards that, for no pun intended, like gives nightmares to like older players. I think they threaded the needle of like giving you the taste of what it was like to play with the other version of this card, and it's still being really good and just not being absolute trash, because in a few of like the ban list videos that I've made, I've talked about like you could try to make a nerf for this card, but then you just potentially make it unplayable, and then at that point, like, why did we even go through the trouble of unbanning it to try to fix it, whatever, to throw it into
Mm-hmm.
a format where it's just not like people aren't going to play with it. It's not going to make a difference. It's just legal now and way worse. And with Chthonian Nightmare and Necrodominance and even the Allurin like fix, the Primal Prayers, which I don't think has really seen a whole lot of play, but
No, I do think that card is probably undervalued right now. I think that people are not doing anything. There's not enough people working on that card. I think it's still good, and I think you're just gonna have to wait and see what happens with it. Obviously, like I think it might be more of a value card than like a combo kill card, but I could be wrong. I've been wrong many a times before. I'm
yeah.
I'm ready to be wrong again.
But just those cards were, we couldn't have necessarily Allurin and Recurring Nightmare and Necropotence in the format, but here's these options to play cards like this, having their own kind of like twist to them, two of them, using energy as like a resource to do something with it, and then Necrodominance just like reducing your hand size, still skipping your draw step, having to pay the life up front. You can't pay for one card individually. Like, you have to decide right then and there, am I going to draw 2 cards or am I going to draw 6 cards? And then you also can't abuse the graveyard by overdrawing and discarding and whatnot. So, like, the fact that, again, I think they thread the needle perfectly. These cards are powerful. They read powerful. So far, they are playing powerful. But by no means do I think that they're, like, miserable. I'm sure they're miserable when they get going. But, like, I think that in a game that's, like, at parity, I don't think it's miserable. I don't think it makes the experience necessarily worse for the time being. It's a home run in my book. I think they did a great job.
Agreed. I don't have too much to say. Obviously, like I said, I think we're still very early on into it. So, we'll see if it's, something where we're looking back, a few months from now and going, God, were we wrong about that? Like, that predominance should have been banned apparently on day one. We did not know,
Mm-hmm.
And I obviously, it's, it's all 2020, were we right, were we wrong, what will happen? But I do think as it stands now, everything feels like a good power level. It feels like everybody got something. It doesn't feel like, we didn't print Oko or Hogak into the format and go, oh, clearly graveyard deck is the best deck, or clearly blue green is the best color now. Like, nothing feels like it's predominantly, oh, this is the best or this is the worst. It feels like everybody has something to gain from this set. And obviously, there are going to be losers from this set, of course. You can see, like, things falling off, which is also a combination, though, of people playing the new cards, right? Like, anytime there's a new set with, like, a bunch of new cards like this, people are going to go gravitate towards the new toys. They want to go play with them, see how they act, see if they're good enough, or do we come back to, old reliable and, like, oh, old reliable is still the best deck. So I think it will be interesting to see how the meta shakes out. But as it stands right now, I think that everybody got something as a whole. We got a bunch of new different decks getting either powered up to be keeping up with the format, or we got new archetypes as a whole, like the energy deck that is running around, or the 2 different energy decks, I should say, because there's a Boros one and the Jeskai Control one that's running around, both of which are kind of vastly different and are both, I think, very good.
Oh yeah, I think it's a nice way to kind of, like, sum up the Modern Horizons 3 experience, and I guess what we're probably going to see for the next few months, because it's going to be a little bit before we get into, the competitive season for Modern. But, so far, set's a home run. While there's some powerful new archetypes, some of the old ones got boosted. Nothing, feels, after getting past the initial shock of, like, oh my god, this might just be, like, too good. I don't think there's a deck currently that is so much better than anything else that's going on. You have a lot of cards, at vastly different rarities that are making a huge impact on the format, as you want for your set specifically designed for that format. And with having, like, a month or two to let the format, like, marinate in Modern Horizons 3 and then eventually Assassin's Creed, whatever, we're going to definitely get, I think, a more defined metagame. We're going to kind of shake out, like, okay, what's getting played because it's, like, doing something cool, and what's actually seeing play because it's actually powerful, relative to, like, what is going on in the format. So I look forward to it. I look forward to the Pro Tour coming up and everything, and just seeing if there's any more cards that end up seeing the light of day in the format.
Agreed. I'm very excited to see what kind of shakes out as, like, the quote unquote best deck of the format, right? Or the quote unquote, like, top 5 best decks of the format. So I mean, besides, Amulet Titan, there's going to be, 40 other decks that are going to shake out to be the top.
Oh yeah. But yeah, that's kind of, I guess that's kind of it for that. Like, that's essentially the modern metagame as a whole, just trying to still figure out what is going on, but at the same time, like, it seems like we're getting a lot of new archetypes, going
Mm-hmm.
forward.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what all happens. I'm excited to play. I know I've played a couple different decks so far, and I have not been disappointed that I registered them. The fact of probably losing to my own arrogance with Storm a little too much, or just fizzling fizzling a little bit too hard on Storm when I needed just to not hit exactly these 2 cards and managed to hit both of these cards at the same time.
Boy, do I feel it.
It
Yeah.
feels really, really rough when you are starting to go off and your like second draw spell for Storm just hits somehow wish into wish, and you're like, I play four of these cards and I had one in my hand.
How did I hit two of the three?
Yeah. Or when you hit the double flashback spell,
Oh yeah, yeah.
it
The
feels real
Piff,
bad.
Past the Flames.
Yeah, Past the Flames when you're like, all right, I got like two mana left. I just need to hit like one. I need to hit one more draw spell or two draw spells and like a ritual in the next one after that. And it's like double Past the Flames. Thanks, deck.
Who saw this coming?
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah,
buddy. You really help me get there.
yeah, and I think it's going to be definitely really exciting, for at least the content creator standpoint for me, just because there is quite a few, strictly new archetypes for Modern Horizons 3 that are coming out that are putting up results. You talked about like the Jeskai control deck. There's like a challenge, I believe it was the 20th of this month, where the finals were two Jeskai energy control decks, or two Jeskai control decks like centered around like using energy as like a resource and stuff. So I mean that's probably the next deck that I'm going to be looking at here, and trying to stumble around and play with.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm very interested to see what all happens. I don't know. There's a lot of cards in this set that I think have already vastly done better than I thought they would. The new Titan, the Flage,
Yep.
the when it has lightning helix on it,
Hmm.
massively better than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a good card. I thought it would see some play. Um, I didn't think it was going to almost single handedly bring back Jeskai control back into the format. That to me was mind boggling. I didn't see that coming anywhere. Because I was thinking like, oh, maybe the four color soup decks are gonna play one or two of them. Maybe Burn will weirdly play it. Maybe there'll be some kind of like Boros mid range deck that comes out and plays it. And it's like, no man, Jeskai Control is playable again. Like, what?
Not to mention also doing all the things that you just previously mentioned as well.
Yeah, yeah. Also, still doing all the things I just mentioned. Like, still seeing playing all those other decks. And it's like even Storm has started to pick this up as a
Mm-hmm.
sideboard card for entering like problematic creatures and as an alternate game plan, like when. And it's wild to think about that. Like this card is now seeing kind of multitude of play, and I definitely kind of thought it was going to be pigeonholed into like as a one or two of in some decks sometimes.
Yeah, and the fact being that turns out if you just put gain 3 life on Inferno Titan would be a playable Magic card.
Yeah,
Turns out, like, I mean, if you really think about it, you have to invest 7 mana and like exiling 5 cards to like, I guess, deal 3 and gain 3 twice. So like
yeah.
it's Inferno Titan.
It's just so good. It's every time I see someone cast that card, or if I cast it, it always feels better than I thought it was going to. Like it just feels better, and I was like, oh, I was wrong. I don't like to be wrong.
Honestly and truly, like, just playing it the little bit that I have with it, it's been great. And I told you that I got yelled at by mana traders because I had Flage for longer than 5 seconds, and I'm like, all right, you saw them, can you give them back to me, please?
Yeah,
And Raoul didn't get that. I believe I borrowed cards for like Nadu. I didn't get that for Nadu or Stoneforge, Shuko, anything like that. But Flage was like the card that I got yelled at for holding on for too long.
I think it's just because it's fitting into so many decks.
Yeah,
Good news is though, the $30 a piece in paper, so go ahead and buy those now, guys.
$40 card inbound.
Yeah,
Um, Also, so like kind of continuing on like our trend of like cards, I think that were a lot better than we expected. Because we kind of went through like most of them, honestly, that I had listed just by explaining the decks and stuff that are absolutely rinsing the competition.
yeah.
Uh, Nethergoyf.
Yeah, Nether Goyf. So I will say that I thought Nether Goyf would be better than people were giving it credit for. I think you and I both had it as a very playable card. Um, Shout out to most of the Jund players who said that this card is going to be horrendous because it only counts my graveyard, despite the fact that like all the Jund Saga decks that exist that play 18 different card types by
Hmm.
themselves. It's gonna be a terrible card. It's okay. Card has definitely seen a lot of play. I really like it. I like what it does. It's a good efficient creature. Like it's even seeing play in some of the like mono black decks. I've seen it play because they've started playing Urza Saga with it too.
God, it's just so it ends up, even if you never escape this card, which turns out it's probably still easy to do so when your deck is playing Urza Saga plus Planeswalkers plus plenty of instant sorceries and basically just like a lot of cards that staple two types onto them.
Yeah,
Just how could this card not be? How could this card not be good, or at least like give you a
playable.
head scratch?
Yeah, yeah. Like the card definitely looked playable already, and I thought it was really weird. So many people were like, "Ah, card's trash," and I was like, "I think you're wrong." Like, I think you got. I did think that like maybe it wasn't as good. Like, I was in between where I thought it was going to be either a lot better than people thought it was, or the naysayers going to be completely right, and it was going to be a lot harder than you thought it was to get like to use it effectively and as a value good creature. And it definitely ended up more towards the naysayers were really wrong. Like it just turned out that it's really good.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, again going to show like how deep MH3 has been so far. Because I mean, like I said, I have like at least 9 cards just on this list. Plus, there's like at least a handful of other ones that we went over that are seeing a lot of play either in the respective archetype that they're in, or in the case of some other ones, just seeing widespread play across multiple different decks in different styles as well.
Hmm. I want to shout out the comment that I said was going to hold together the energy deck and be silently the best card for energy. Tune the narrative. That one blue, draw a card, instant, gain 2 energy.
Oh yeah,
Card is single-handedly holding together most of the energy decks.
yeah, doing a very good job. I mean, like the energy decks and like the different payoffs they get and all the ways that they get a bunch of energy for super cheap just make their spells like way better than I thought they would be.
Hmm. Shout out to Galvanic Discharge too, a card that I definitely did not think was going to be that great. I thought it would be playable if energy was playable, but I've definitely seen decks that are playing almost like playing zero, like zero to like no real energy like efficiency, and are still playing Galvanic Discharge just because it's good.
Turns out like your removal spell is like the gift that keeps on giving, because then like it if you don't use all the energy, it just makes future ones that much better.
Exactly, and like it's just great to see. Like Galvanic Discharge on turn 1 when you kill the Ragavan, into Galvanic Discharge on turn 4 when you're killing, the Shieldred. You're just like, oh, feels great.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. No, yeah. And Modern Horizons 3 is like a bit an absolute just home run, a gem and a scholar.
In 2 months, we'll find out we were still right about it.
That's true. I know that I think there's a few cards, of course, that I had in mind, but as soon as I started to talk about them, they ran away into the dark corner of my brain. Some cards that could have been like really good, uh, and just did not hold up, like Kappa Cannoneer. Like I have not seen any affinity decks at all.
Yeah, so I can't tell if it's because Affinity is not good in that sense, or if it's because like cards like Meltdown and stuff got printed, so it makes them a lot like worse as a whole. Because like I've seen some Affinity lists and they look really strong. So I just don't know if people aren't playing it because it's the boring thing to do.
It might be the boring thing to do, but still, there's like a lot of like cool swingy cards that are like in that deck too. Like I think Kozilek's Binding or something like that, like the 3 mana like enchantment that gives you like draws you cards and shit or something like that.
Yeah, if you play a 3, 4, or 5 mana spell, I think it is, you get 2 Scions.
Yep.
And if you play 7 mana or more, you draw 2 or draw 3. It's something ridiculous.
I think it's draw
Uh,
two. I think it turns all of your things into thought monitors.
Gotcha. Yeah, see, I'm not 100% sure on the what it is. I'm trying to eventually find that card.
But yeah, like
Yeah, Ugin's Binding.
okay.
Oh yeah, so I know there's not Ugin's Binding. That's
Ugin's
wrong
Binding,
card.
I think, is
The trash card.
yeah, the Cyclonic Rift. If you cast
Yeah,
something 7 or greater, it's in your graveyard.
yeah. I was like, wait, that is now what I was like. Kozilek's Unsettling. That's why
Okay,
it's not
okay.
common. Okay, so 3 mana enchantment, 2 and a blue. Yeah, whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 4, 5, or 6, create 2 colorless Scion Swans. And then when you would cast a spell with 7 mana or greater, draw 3.
Oh, it is draw three.
Yeah,
Sheesh. Um,
yeah,
yeah, look, the fact that there was definitely a lot of, it felt like affinity support. They had another 7 cost card that they could essentially cast for free. They had another kind of like 3 mana payoff, to pair with their simulacrum synthesizer. You know, uh, they have Kappa Cannoneer, which is just like a big thing that is hard to kill and eventually is just unblockable to pair with something like a Shadow Spear or whatever. It
mhm,
just it seemed like it had a lot going for it, and it was a deck that saw a lot of momentum going into after Outlaws of Thunder Junction, kind of going towards MH3, and then seemingly getting more cards that it could play. Like I thought it was going to have more of a problem of like, what cards are we going to cut now because there's so many other cards that we can play, and what's going
yeah,
to be the right build rather than having bad cards that it's going to play, and it is just not really making an impact currently on the format.
yeah. I think a little bit of that is right now we have the combo decks too. Like you have the Nadu and you have Storm. So I mean, like, not that like you don't get to play some interaction. Obviously, playing Affinity, like you get to. There's good artifacts that are good against combo. There's they get the counterspell, Metallic Rebuke, things like that. But I do think that might be one of the bigger, like quote unquote, bigger issues for Affinity is that you can't set up fast enough to um win game one. So like you're losing game one because you're not setting up fast enough. Like you need to have like the perfect start. And obviously game one you don't know you need to have the perfect start against, the combo deck. Like if you sit it down against Storm game one and you have like a little bit of a slower hand but you're more resilient to the removal spells that you assume you're gonna see, and your opponent goes, oh, they're on, you know, Affinity, I don't have to care what they're doing basically.
Mm.
I'm just gonna go off on turn three. Like I'm gonna play my Rao or Ruby Medallion on turn two. I'm gonna go off on turn three when I untap, have 3 mana, and I'm just like almost deterministically going to win.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to give a shit what they're doing over there. That's really hard to win when you're in that position. Going, yeah, man. I needed 2 more turns before I could attack you for lethal, and you grape shotted me for 1 million. But
Yeah, yeah,
did you guys see my Kappa? I have my Kappa out there.
yeah. That's fair.
He was in play.
This is my Ninja Turtle.
Yeah. He's
Turn,
got a tank. I
man.
think that might be why we see Affinity not doing so well. I also think that um if you're someone who likes Affinity, you really like Affinity. If you don't aren't someone who's like that, Affinity is not like the most like people aren't like always excited to play Affinity. Like it's one
Right.
of those decks where people like love it or hate it type situation. And so like if it's not the best deck in the format and it doesn't have good matchups theoretically. Obviously, I don't know how good the combo matchups are. And it doesn't have good matchups against like the two combo decks that are the most played deck right now in the format. Maybe you don't want to play it.
Yeah. Maybe it just isn't interactive enough. When the two best decks require you to be able to interact with it in some meaningful way. So maybe that's why. But even then, like having so many options and so many different tools, like, and even like those decks not commanding, like 50, 60% of the metagame, Yeah,
Hmm.
it's like it's if it's good against everything else, or at least has like a shot against everything else, like heck, why not give it a try?
Yeah, it's one of the decks I can't wait to try out. I want to try. I want to cast Kappa Canyon. I just want to put Kappa Canyon into play and then start killing my opponent.
I like turtles,
Yes.
but that's definitely a deck that comes to mind as like one that didn't really get better. It seemingly just got worse.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm interested to see what's going to happen here over the time and see what happens with it. I think it's going to start putting up numbers after the Pro Tour or after we kind of like once you get a more resolved meta. I think that's when Affinity can actually be a little bit better and kind of come out of left field almost because like you have the Urza Saga targets to be able to play the like the good sideboard cards in the main deck that you can go search up your bullets for. You have like it is still a blue artifact deck. We have counter spells, and we have all the good artifacts, disruption spells like sideboard hate.
Yeah,
Theoretically, this deck should be good.
yeah, like I don't know, maybe just like there needs to be that bigger emphasis on like creature interactions, and the deck just doesn't really have that. Like it beats all the creatures in combat eventually, but when both decks that require the creature interaction don't beat you through combat, then what's the point?
Exactly. I think that might be the biggest problem. Like I said, it could just be because we have two combo decks that are doing really well. It could be because that it's not like Affinity got some new toys, but it's not as shiny as new as like the energy decks that are running around, or the scam decks that get to draw a million cards, or insert whatever else you see running around. It might just be lack of shininess is why it's not seeing play.
Oh yeah. Well, Randy, what do you have any other like thoughts, opinions, ideas, etc. on MH3?
Um, I think I think it's a really well done set as of now. I'm really, like I said, I'm just curious to see what people keep coming up with and what happens at the Pro Tour. I think that's what everyone's really waiting for is what's going to happen at the Pro Tour.
Yeah, I can definitely see it. There's a lot of cool decks that are coming out. Like I said, different archetypes. We've talked about it to ad nauseum at this point. So it's going to be interesting to see what the best players in the world are. Kind of stick to and just say yes, like this is going to be the best deck to play for this tournament.
Hmm. And we could even get where what we saw at the last Modern Pro Tour where what it was all all Tron and after that tournament, Tron kind of died off. Like Scam was basically the number one deck in the format.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be something crazy like that where we see that maybe um, mono black Scam slash aggro, whatever you want to call it, is super overrepresented, and we end the Pro Tour and something else won the Pro Tour, but Scam put four lists into the top eight, and then 2 months from now, everyone's playing Storm.
I'm currently getting attacked by my dog. Come here, buddy. Yeah. See, look. I just want your love. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. And honestly, I think Tron is still like not necessarily like there's so many good colorless payoffs. Like Tron probably still is like a decent like pick for like the metagame as well because it's like still consistent and you just have your pick of like colorless haymakers.
Yeah, I don't think like Tron is not bad by any stretch of the imagination. I would say like yeah, with it being able to get like Devourer of Destiny was the big one that I got to get, and like now they're running Charters in the main, because they have um the ability to play the Ugin's Labyrinth and such like that. Just kind of crazy.
Oh yeah, you get a lot of cool stuff by playing the by being the bad guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on, buddy.
But no, like I said, I'm interested to see what happens. I think that that's pretty much where everyone's at. Is we're just kind of waiting to see what happens, what comes out, and we'll kind of gonna go from there.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that I mean that wraps up my thoughts and stuff of MH3 and what we kind of expect and everything.
Yeah.
Um, I suppose I could try to wrap it up, but I'm no good at doing presents. That's why I have my wife do all the presents. So, but that is going to do it for this episode of the Casual Spikes podcast. Hopefully, if you made it this far, we do greatly appreciate your support. And if you would like to take it just even an inch further, you can subscribe to not only my channel but Randy's channel, Modern with Randy, which I will have linked in the description down below and probably annotated somewhere in the beginning of the video, as I have been doing for the last few episodes. It's a pretty easy way to support both of our contents, and we do a lot of modern and pioneer stuff. And of course we try to do the show as often as we can, like at least one episode like every other week, as long as conditions are, ideal, I suppose.
Yeah.
So, again, if you want to like support all that, everything like that, subscribe, ring notification bell, all that great stuff. It is definitely greatly appreciated. If you have any questions that you want to ask us, anything like that, feel free to leave them in the comments down below, and we can answer them. Nobody's left a question yet, which does not surprise me at all, because people, we're not playing Magic, so people can't yell at us and say, well, you should have done this, rather than asking questions. So
Exactly.
but yeah, that's going to do it for me. I'm Dakota. That's Randy. This has been the Casual Spikes podcast, and we will hope to see you all in the next episode.